So, how confident are you navigating online? Do you fear that clicking on links and then you get nervous when things don't work or that they might not work? Well, you're in the right place to hear about cyber smart habits. My name is Sigrid Kast, marketing and visibility strategist, and I'm transforming visibility into influence, impact, and high level opportunity with global virtual expos. And I have invited today cybersecurity specialist Katja Feldtmann. Hello, Katja.
Hi, Secret. Great to be here.
Thank you so much, Katja. Now, Katja is the owner of Cybershore, a boutique cybersecurity consulting firm supporting businesses' online exposure. Katja, I want to have you help me unpack cybersecurity. What does it mean? What is cybersecurity? Let's go right into it.
Yep. I think in essence it's not much different from personal security, right? When you walk through the street and you look after your purse or your handbag and you try and probably not talk to strangers or at least assess the stranger and see, oh, do they do they seem like a good person or maybe they get me into trouble. In essence, it really is just looking after yourself and your belongings online, really at a most simplified level, protect yourself and, in the business context, your assets, which mostly will be your information or your customers' information online.
I love how you've just so simply, without any tech speak or anything, have directly hooked it onto something that we all know. Because when we talk about cybersecurity, hacking, Trojan horses, all this sort of thing, people get lost so easily. But you've put it directly and practically right back at something that we all know, personal security. Don't talk to strangers. Absolutely fantastic. So, what does that mean? Don't talk to strangers. When you are getting to know someone online and they send you a link, they say, hey, have a look at this here. Should the alarm bells ring? What would you be asking someone? What would you be looking out for? Would you just click because you know the person? Give us a little bit around that, please.
Yep. So obviously there's many different ways you can receive messages and often we say simple principle still applies. Common sense prevails, so a lot of it is just when you get a message, either through LinkedIn or email, just take some time, pause. We're all very busy and it's very easy to just click something. Sometimes maybe even by mistake without even really, paying too much attention, your finger, especially on the phone, and just click something. So just take some time, and actually assess the context of the email, or the LinkedIn message or chat message, whatever it might be, whether were you expecting the message from this person? If you didn't expect it, it's probably maybe some sales message. Then you might want to look up the person that sent the message. On LinkedIn, for example, it's quite good. You can have a look how many followers do they have? Have they posted something? If they sort of the ghost profiles that have maybe 10 followers and a couple of posts, and they probably don't seem so trustworthy. Have a look. Do they have a website? They where do they work? Google that company. Does that even exist? Like little things like this, just a little bit of research when you don't know the person and you aren't expecting the message. So that's always a red flag, if someone seems to have sort of not much online and you can't really find out much about them, then that's probably not good. So that would be sort of my first piece of advice.
I guess what I'm hearing, Katja, is it's sort of common sense, but we see this quite often these days in content that common sense is no longer common, and so you have probably that a part of the population that is really scared and worried, and they don't do anything, and therefore they really keep themselves away from everything that could possibly be an expansion of their learning of their experiences and even of something nice, while then you have others that are jump in head first and pass on things to others without thinking where else it might go, and that is where then something comes in through the back door, so to speak. So, common sense, let's have a look at that. If you get a message, and I like that you're talking about LinkedIn, of course, because that is big for us to go and connect with people directly. It's all very well to be talking in the post, comments, and so on, but we want to get to know the people more deeply and more in more detail what they do and who they are. So there's a number of things that we can already take research into, as you said, which is really great. So generally speaking, be aware of who you are talking to. That's the first thing. And when you get emails from out of the blue and you don't know who they are, but even if they come from a supposedly known or trusted source, like a government department, what is the key thing to look for there? And it comes back to research to some extent, I think, again. What would it be to look for if I get an email and it says, here's your tax return and you're going to get $50,000, just click here? What would you be looking for to make sure you are secure?
Yeah. So number one would be always check the sender. Don't just look at the name by itself or the email address by itself, because it could be that the name, that might be Inland Revenue Tax Department, but the email address that actually sent it isn't from Inland Revenue. So that is usually very easy by to spot this. However, that wouldn't obviously help you if for some reason the sender had an issue on their side and is so that's one. Then the other thing too is, if it's official departments like government departments, you can just call them up and say, "Hey, like Google their phone number, ring them up, say, "Hey, I've received this message. I'm not sure this is real because it seems weird. I don't expect a tax refund or whatever." So you can do that. And most official government institution banks, they usually also have websites on their own web pages on their own website that will say, here's some known scams, some known phishing things. So that's always good to check out um, first. And if I'm in doubt, like, and I feel like I haven't expecting that, calling the person that you think it is or the department is the best method.
Hmm.
And so that's one. If there is a link and you are interested in clicking it, it does pay to hover over it first. So if you use your mouse and you just hover, don't click, just move the mouse over the link and then read, and the it usually pops up in the bottom left somewhere in the browser, and read where it goes. So if you know that link should take you to the Inland Revenue Department website, but it does actually say something completely different, then it's probably not good. There's also link scanners that you can use. So if you Google, phishing link scanner on Google, for example, NordVPN has one where you can actually copy and paste the link in there, and it checks. That can also be helpful if you're in doubt. So that's just like a little tool. And then really, this is where the common sense thing comes in. It's people are driven by emotions, and emotions often. So everyone, I would like to believe, has common sense, but it's the emotions that override the common sense, and that's exactly what these sort of scammers use. So look out for anything that creates sort of urgency or fear. Like, do this now or you lose your access, or if you don't click this link, you're not gonna get your tax refund. Anything like that that just seems too urgent or too good to be true. It probably is. And again, it goes back to take a pause and think, how do I feel right now looking at this? If you feel too excited, too worried, or too stressed, then probably just walk away and have a look at it later, because let's face it, hardly anything is really that super urgent in life, right? Especially not when it comes through an email. So that's that. And then also, if there are any attachments or links, same thing, if you're not confident that the sender is real, then just don't open them and probably just call up the sender and ask, hey, I've got this email, with this attachment. Is this real? But just don't download it or don't open it or anything. And
Mm.
yeah, and if in doubt, don't click anything, don't open anything. And also ask a friend, family, anyone that might, think they be able to help, is also always a good idea. Someone you trust, of course, not someone that like get to click the link.
I think that is just such practical information, practical tips that you're sharing with us. Now, one would think when you're doing a lot of things online, you know this, but I think a lot of people don't really know it. Certainly not when you in the moment when something happens, as you just said so validly, there comes this either excitement or fear, and that plays on our ability to think clearly, to stay calm, doesn't it? We sort of all of a sudden all churned up. Should I click? Should I not click? So it's really important. I'm just going to recap that. It's really important to stop for a moment and think and look on all of the parts that you see on the screen. What is the link? Where does it come from? What does it actually say? And I love your tip about hovering over it. So don't click it. Keep your hands well away from the click part of your mouse, but hover over it and have a look where the link actually goes, because it shows you at the bottom left-hand side of your screen. That is such an important part for people who are not so familiar with it. So we've looked at a lot of things that are fairly personal for ourselves. Let's take a look, Katja, at businesses. You are actually working with different sizes business, from sort of the smaller ones with perhaps just one or two employees right up to large companies and government organizations that would have a very different setup to the smaller ones. The average sort of, well, it's not average really, the smaller size business, let's say 2 to 20 employees, something like that. When you're working with a company like that, do you tell them or talk to their teams about cybersecurity as much as you are working for the business itself? I would imagine. What is it you talk about, or what is it you tell the employees?
Yeah, so I think in general, when it comes to cybersecurity, there's sort of two parts. There's the human part, the people, the security education, and the awareness, and then there's like the technical stuff, the technical, we call them technical controls that you can implement to try and prevent, a potential cyber attack or a privacy breach in the first place. So that's where things get a bit more technical, and some of these things are easier than others. But in general, security education and awareness is key. So if you are a business owner, you've personally not, might know how to detect a phishing email and be cyber savvy, but do your employees know, right? Like, and how, if they don't, there will be some that won't know. Not everyone will be at the same level. So it's quite important to train your employees, either like, get a third party to do it, someone like me, and there's also platforms and tools that can support it as also for that smaller businesses as well. So that's important. And if you work in a business that handles a lot of personal information, for example, you may really be worried about that, because if you have a privacy breach, you most likely have to report that and you potentially pay a fine, and you might also have cyber insurance, and that would cyber insurance in general also stipulates this is what you have to do. So definitely security education and awareness is key, because you can't just expect people to know these things. And even if they do, there's always a risk, right? So that's number one. And then there's a few other small things that you can do on the technical side. So number one is like have strong passwords, right, across anything at least that handles sensitive information or financial information, things like that. And it's not just about losing or compromising information. It's also about being able to continue to operate your business, because if you suddenly don't have access to certain systems anymore, they're gone, right? Like even
Mm.
if the information might not even matter, but you need that to do your work, like we just do this video. If you suddenly have no ability to do videos, that will hold your business. So So keep in mind, like also what are all the systems I have? How do I protect them? And then put strong passwords and what they call multi-factor authentication, where that is pretty common in most things now. You log into your account and then it might send you a text message or an email, or you use like one of these authenticator apps to just make sure. It's like that, then they know, okay, this is the person that's actually trying to log in, and it's just an additional layer of security there. So definitely do that. And yeah, I think in general that is sort of the key thing, and just be aware what is it what you want to protect, and if these things were no longer available, think about what do I have to do to make sure I can still
Mm.
work. The whole business, it is business continuity more than it has to do with cyber. But if, especially if your business relies on IT, you definitely want to have a closer look. And then the rest, I think the majority is good cyber hygiene. Also, don't use your personal email account for business, or vice versa. Try not to use your business account for personal matters. They should be kept separate as well.
It certainly sounds like things when you mention them, I hadn't consciously thought about it in that way, but when you mention them, it just makes sense, and you sort of think, or I just think, oh, yes, all right, yes, I am doing that, or maybe I'm not doing that, I'll have to have a quick look. And then I'm thinking, yes, I should know that because, it's sort of something that is again relatable to other areas of our life, coming back to that very practical personal safety example that you gave us at the very beginning. I love that. So the business with a couple of employees, I think a real focus point there is that education, is that you're talking to your employees, to the people you're working with, because they may or they may not be aware. And like you said earlier, the moment of excitement about something, they might get an email into the business email that they shouldn't, but they might do, and it is a personal one, and they click on it, and something can happen. So being aware of that and teaching your people, teaching the team about those things on a regular basis. Katja, I'm going to put you on the spot here. Is there, or do you have some sort of checklists or tips list or something like that that you are offering? Now, I know you work predominantly with larger businesses, they won't need those checklists, but for the average business owner and those with a smaller size business, is there something like that available from you at all?
So what I've developed is I have developed a couple of products for the small to medium business market, and they kind of separate. One is like, okay, you kind of feel savvy enough and you just want to know what are the areas I should look into. So it's kind of like a workshop, and for a couple of hours, and then you, the business owner, goes off and do your own thing most likely, and just cover these things off. And then the other one is a cyber risk check, which basically sitting down with the business, asking questions to, the business, whoever is responsible for the business and the IT, that might sometimes be an outside company as well. And then just go through a set of questions, and then they get a recommendations prioritized, what makes the biggest impact, because it's also every business is different, depending on what your business does and what kind of information you hold. the- You may not need all this stuff, so you really want to focus on what gives me the best outcome, because people often think cybersecurity is expensive. It will be expensive if you, for example, get hit by one of these ransomware attacks where
Mm.
they say, hey, I want you to pay $10,000. Otherwise, you don't get access back. You don't get your information back. And people always think, oh, it's so expensive, cybersecurity, blah, 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 blah. But then it actually gets really expensive when that happens. And it's not just that, you have to then still restore whatever was there. You need to
Mm.
deal with the outfall, the reputation. So I always say, prevention is worth a lot, and also given I know Australia, New Zealand is a little bit behind on these things, but I know Australia and many other countries, for example, also have legal requirements that you legally not allowed to pay ransom. So if your business gets, a ransomware attack, you will be stuck because you're not allowed to pay the money, which is what most people end up doing just to keep things going. So you really have to report it to the regulator, go through all the stuff, while during all that time you won't be able to do business, right? So that's something to keep in mind. I think a little bit investment now will save you, a lot of hassle later, and you will learn a lot about, your own personal safety, things you haven't even probably thought about.
Yeah, absolutely. I think that is so relevant. And we often don't think about this balance of what is expensive, what does it actually mean that this payment here gives you in terms of safety and security on the other end. Now, this is not about cybersecurity, this is just about general. Some years ago, I made the mistake of not backing up work that I was doing, and I lost it all because everything went not through cybersecurity but through technical faults, and I had to then pay to have that all retrieved. So that was a couple of $1,000s at the
Yeah.
time to have data retrieved. It's a lot more with a cyber attack that you may be up for compared to what the preventative measures by engaging someone like you or having those sessions with you to do. So definitely the way to go is to prevent and think about before you look at just the dollar signs at the time. So I think that is absolutely important. Now, we have touched on a number of different things. One thing I want to mention is everything that Katja is sharing with us here and much more and more detail is going to be on her expo stall. Katja is going to be one of our exhibitors at the upcoming July expo. So you can really get to know who she is, what she does, and what her programs offer you, what the offers she has actually entail for you. So that is something to have a look out for, to come and be a visitor at the July Expo, where Katja has an exhibition stall and virtual expo, so you can access it from anywhere in the world. Katja, in relation to going to a platform like that expo, for example, I have a question around it there. People have to allow their browsers to do certain things so that the functionality is available with such an online expo, for example. They have to allow for the platform to use the camera and the sound. And that is not just with such a platform. That is always popping up on many, many platforms online. Is there something that is really important to know about that before you click that yes button? Because people undoubtedly think, should I click yes or should I click no? Because when they click no, they're not going to get the experience. What should they be thinking? Should I click yes or no? Or should they be thinking, yes, I know this, I've got signed up for this here, it's okay. What's
Yeah.
your input on that, please?
Yeah, so I think you made a valid point there. Obviously, if you've signed up for something, you assumed this person is not, after me and anything bad. So you already trust the person. You've bought a service, or you're gonna have a video call with someone, or whatever it might be. I mean, so one thing is like necessity is key. You only want to allow the permissions that you need to have the application, or like in this case, the expo function, right? So like in our case, if we have a video call, and so you need video and audio, but you might not or you may not need a camera because you only want the audio, so only allow what you need. So in the case of the expo, you probably need the video, the audio, so just think of that, when it pops up and you think, okay, obviously I need to hear what people are saying, so I enable the audio. And then one thing is, now with the more modern browser, I mostly use Chrome browser, but I'm sure the other ones have their tools. Like, you can use temporary permissions. So what I tend to do in like the Expo case, because it's a sort of longer term, it's not just a 5 minute thing. So I would probably then choose allow while using this application. So that makes sure that while you're using it, the setting stays in place and you don't miss anything. You can also sometimes just say allow it once, which, like I mostly just use it for the app because it's sort of longer. I don't quite have a use case at the top of my head for allow once, but you can set that And then with the pop-ups in general, you would keep them blocked by default because 99% of the time pop-ups are not a good thing. But in the example for the expo, if something does pop up, which will most likely be, hey, do you want to enable video or audio? So don't just click that away because it might be a bit of a mission to get it to come up again, and then you might because you would have to probably refresh. So again, just take a little think before you click and be like, okay, yep, I need video, I need audio. And yeah, that's pretty much it. Just like be cautious. But yes, if you're on the expo, obviously you will need the audio and the video and
The
just
pop,
check on the pop-up
yeah,
and
the pop-up for chat because it's got a pop-up chat
yeah,
feature on that,
yeah.
for example. I love your, again, practical approach, Katja. You've really given us some tips and some insights here into cybersecurity. Perhaps not totally 100% on exactly what you do, but you've given us information for the general public, the general people in business that need to know and want to know how to act and behave when they're online and use online platforms and get emails into their email, whether that is for business or personal. So let me do a very quick recap while you think about what your parting words might be. The interesting thing Katja has told us here today in this video is that really stop and think before you do anything. It might sound exciting, the psychology is there to trip you up and trigger you to do something in a hurry. Don't do that. Take a moment and think about it before you do anything. Be alert and research. If you're not sure, research who the person is. Take a good look at the email it's it itself. Check on where it is going to, if there are links there to click on, and absolutely be aware to, when you're working with people, when you have a team, to educate them, to talk about security. What do they know? What do they not know? People don't just say, oh, I don't know this. Not generally. They don't want to share that there are things they don't know. So tell them, just say, we're going to talk about this today with your team, and give them some insights. And Katja certainly offers education around that, even for the small business. So do approach her. Absolutely easy to contact her. Katja will also be on the Global Virtual Expo in July, and you can have more details there by visiting her booth. Katja, what are your parting words for this?
Yep, I just quickly came up with this little rhyme. So I'm like, don't be scared, be prepared, right? So, because just like in life, we can go out, there's a lot of scary things out there, online and offline, but just prepare yourself, skill up, get a better understanding so you can go out in confidence and, navigate, which I think was one of the headings, wasn't it? Navigate online with confidence.
Yeah, absolutely. I love that. Say that again, Katja. Did you write it down? Because I have it.
Yep, I did. Don't be scared, be prepared.
I love it. That is fantastic. Don't be scared. Be prepared. Katja Feldtmann, cybersecurity specialist, has given us a lot of tips and insights today. Thank you, Katja.
Thank you, Secret, for having me. Thanks everyone for joining.